Students of our summer program, and to those of you who are here, members of the media, we want to say welcome. Today we have with us Mr. Gabriel Christian and his sister, Esther, and they are going to do some presentations. They are writers, Dominican writers, who, like those of you, the younger ones that are here today, went through the stages of the public library, and they felt it important today to come today to do this presentation here, so that you can understand the value that is found in the public library, Roseau Public Library, and in the library in Dominica's Library in general. So they have gone for it. They have passed through these walls, through these gates, and today they're back to make a presentation and to continue the development, Dominica's development process. So at this time, I will call on Mr. Christian, and then he will make a he will give us brief words, and then we'll take the process from there.
Thank you very much, Mr. Harris. Let's give him a round of applause for welcoming us this morning. Good morning. Oh, come on now. Good morning. When I came in, first of all, my name's Gabriel Christian. My sister is Esther Christian. And and Mr. Harris, thank you again so much for the warm welcome. When I came in this morning and I saw the young children on the other side, I said to him, Mr. Harris, you know, that we should have them here. And he said, well, you know, they're 4- and 5-year-olds, and they're a little too young. I said, no, I have vivid memories of maybe being even a little younger than that, or about their age. And I'd come here with my older brothers. And I remember the first book that I borrowed from the public library. It was about a farmer in a state in the United States called Slade, Mr. Slade. And Mr. Slade worked tirelessly on the prairies growing wheat and corn. And one day the ox that he had died. And what he wanted to do, though, was to continue tilling his land. And so he didn't have an ox. And what he did was he took a piece of rope and made something called a lasso. How many people here know a lasso? Can you raise your hands? Okay. Can you tell me what a lasso is? She says it's a rope. Can anyone else give me a little more description as to what a lasso is? It's a rope, and you make a circle with it, and you send it out, and you catch something, right? So he went out into the wild, and he saw a whole herd of buffalo. It's huge buffalo. And he made a lasso with his rope, and he sent it out. And he caught the buffalo. But listen, the buffalo was wild. It was not a domesticated animal. Domesticated meaning it was not an animal that stayed around the house like a dog or a cat. It was out in the wild. So when he hitched it, when he tied it to his plow, it pulled him all over the state of what I called Arkansas at that time. I didn't know Americans said Arkansas, but I read Arkansas. And it dug a huge trench all over the state that all of you could feel into. And that was the first book I borrowed. So when I borrowed the book, I read it. My brothers helped me read it because I couldn't quite read. I went home. I loved it. I brought it back. And remember, children, always bring back your. And I loved the book so much, I borrowed the book 5 more times. So the 5th time I borrowed the book, my brother said, "What do you think you are? You think you're Farmer Slade?" My name's Gabriel. He says, "You think you're Farmer Slade?" "I think you're Gabe Slade." And to this day, close family members and friends call me Gabe Slade. So my life has been, in fact, changed by the Roseau Public Library. We're very happy to be here. We're happy that you're here. We want to encourage reading. And when you've read as much, we also want to encourage writing, because there are lots of stories that Dominicans can tell to other Dominicans and our friends all over the world. So without much further ado, I will turn over to Esther, who will tell you maybe a few things about her very wonderful experiences here at the Roseau Public Library, which is a treasure we must preserve and build on. Because a year from now, the library will be celebrating 100 years. And let's give all of us a round of applause for keeping the library for 100 years. So before I go on, we've got some books here, some written by myself and a very good friend of mine who's now a judge in Canada, Irvin Andre. We formed the Pont Casse Press 14 years ago today. And there's also a new book that Miss Christian has written. So I'll step back and Miss Christian will speak. At the end of that, we'll do a presentation of some books that we're going to donate to the library so we can continue to add to the reading material that you, the young ones, and others may have. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Hi, I think I have to tippy-toe like this. Can anybody tippy-toe like this? Right up there? My name is Esther Christian, and I certainly want to welcome you to this event here. Is everybody having fun? Yeah. Tell me some of the fun things you have done this summer. Have you been to the sea? Who has been to the sea? Can I see a raise of hands? Whoa. I'm trying to get here myself because you know what? Where I live, I don't get the opportunity to get to visit the sea as much as you do, you know? So I'm really envious of that, and I'm sure you're enjoying that. What other fun things have you done here at the library? Read. Arts and crafts. What else? Make puppets. Who loves making puppets? That's a lot of fun, right? What's so fun about it? You could put your hand in it and make jokes, but guess what? It allows you to imagine, right? And make believe. And reading does that for you. When I was growing up, as you heard Gabe said, we were introduced to the library at a very tender age, as young as you were. And one of the things I truly enjoyed about reading was that it gave me the opportunity to take me to lands that had never visited before. Everybody ever heard of America? England? Okay, how did you know about those places? Books, right? And then perhaps your family members also told you about that. What about Africa? Okay. Anybody ever saw an elephant? Anybody ever rode an elephant? I rode an elephant. I was really tall. But one of the things I certainly wanted to encourage, and Gabe and myself coming here and making the presentation of the books, along with Samora and Mickey and Joan, I want you to introduce them to you. Samora and Mickey, can you stand? Samora and Mickey is Gabe's kids, and his beautiful wife, Joan. Joan, can you stand? Okay, and Mickey is a big fan of Spider-Man. Anybody ever heard of Spider-Man? Okay, what does Spider-Man do? He what? He splices his webs. Mickey, do you have anything you want to share with them? What else does Spider-Man do? He does this with his fingers, right? And he spins that web. And if you're in that web, what happens? He does that with it? You see, I don't even know the signal. But we could create a real exciting time about this. But again, how did you learn about Spider-Man? Perhaps through the movies, but again, through reading. So reading is a lot of fun. And that's why the wonderful folks here, like Mr. Harris, his wonderful staff, Mrs. Jones, all of this, they try to bring to you the joy of reading. Because with reading, although you're here in Dominica, you could be in multiple places. And that is certainly one of the things we want to encourage you to read. And when you read, guess what? Sooner or later, you'll be able to write. And when you write, you could write your own Spider-Man. Or guess what? Even better, you could write your own Quapo story. You know what a Quapo is? A crab? You could also write a crab story, but anybody knows what is a Quapo? A frog. Okay? And frogs here, quapos here are very unique. Dominica has a very unique type of frog. It's called quapo. What about the birds? Anybody knows about the parrot? The Cicero parrot. I'm loving this. You guys are great. Give yourselves a real round of applause. Great round of applause because you guys are really fantastic. But I know it's warm. I'm not going to take up a whole lot of time, but I thank you so much for joining us here. And one of the things I want to leave you with is reading is fun. I want everyone to say that after me. Reading is fun. Again? Reading is fun. I want them to hear you way down at Nassif. Reading is fun. All righty then. Thank you.
Okay, we want to thank Miss Esther Christian and Mr. Gabriel Christian for these words. At this time, we'll call on Dominique and Marconin to make a presentation.
Dominique, Samora Dominique, is my first child. The fact I call her Dominique, a middle name, needs no explanation, right? And McConan here, going to make a presentation of these books that we brought to the public library. So that we've closed the circle. We've come full circle. We came here as children. We learned. We attained a degree of education and knowledge, and now we want to close the circle by sharing that knowledge with the new generation so we can continue the effort of development that we're engaged in. They are young members of the Dominica Academy of Arts and Sciences, and they have been part of the Dominica Association of Washington, D.C., raising funds for Dominica over the years. And we hope this will not be the last. So, Samora, why don't you say something to the children of Dominica?
Well, as my father and my aunt said, reading is fun, and sometimes when you read books, you can, like when you read books, and then after you read the book, you could think of making your own book as a young child, because one time I read a book, and then I thought about making my own book, and then I made my own book, but I didn't finish it, but it was a good book. It was about seasons and stuff.
And you would like to tell them what you feel about being here in Dominica?
Well, Dominica is cool, and it's a nice place to live in, and it's a lot of trees and fruits and stuff. and if you're lucky to live here, I'm not really.
Well, it started as a back-to-school assignment, right, about your summer vacation. Well, that sounds pretty standard.
Well, not standard if you're two Prince George's County kids. They decided they were going to do one better. When it came to extra credit, these kids wrote the book.
My name is Samora Dominique Christian.
This is how the story begins. Two kids on an adventure to Dominica, the Caribbean island where their parents grew up. A place Samora Christian and her little brother Makonnen had only heard about.
I was speechless. I couldn't believe that I was in Dominica.
Dominica, a mountainous island, is captured in home video during one of their visits. They got the idea for the book after their first trip. Samora was 8 years old and Makonnen just 5.
Instead of bringing like a scrapbook or a bunch of pictures home, we thought a book would be a bigger thing than just bringing a bunch of pictures home.
Samora started writing. Our visit to the island was born.
I saw Samora with 8 pages stapled together, and title on there was Our Visit to the Island. I said, "What are you doing?" She said, "I'm writing a book."
Makonnen drew the pictures with the help of an illustrator.
It was kind of amusing to write them. It was fun. I made some pictures look very funny and stuff.
Their school, St. Ambrose, put the book in its library and plans a book signing.
I really think it does enhance their sense of possibility, so I don't think this will be the last author that you see from us.
Writing the book did take sacrifices.
My dad said we can't watch a lot of cartoons.
This year, Samora and Makonnen launched their book back in Dominica.
This book is written by 2 young children about your age.
If people can make books, so can children.
It is just the beginning of their literary adventure.
They call Dominica the most beautiful island in the world.
Samora and Makonnen are now considering a sequel.
Here we go. We present this to you in the library.
They can just hand her the book.
Present this to you from the Christian family to the library.
Thank you very much.
Samora, you want to take the rest of them? Make you take the rest of them. Give them to her. First give them to her. Give it to Miss Jones. You know all of them.
You'll have to come and learn it from the library.
You'll have to come back and borrow.
Yeah.
Take some more, Mickey. Give it to her.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let's see something else. Huh?
Sure.
You can just tell them where the books will be.
Before I go any further, just want to thank a few people for being here. Captain Francis Richards of the Dominica Cadet Corps, always interested in young people and their development. Miss Nelica Victorine. Miss Victorine, can you come please? She's very shy, but Miss Victorine has done an enormous job in publicity for the books, both in Chance Meeting and Rain on the Tin Roof. At this point in time, I would have liked to have given maybe a few readings, but I know they've got to get back to the arts and crafts. But if anybody has any questions about what it is we are doing, what it is the Dominica Academy of Arts and Science is doing, what it is the Dominicans overseas are doing, I would like to say that feel free to ask a question or two. But what we are trying to do is just to have this partnership between Dominicans at home and Dominicans abroad working together in love and unity for the development of the country. Any questions? I'd be happy to take them, or Ms. Christian would be happy to take them. If you've got a question, you can just raise your hand and you can ask me.
Know how to use a word processor.
Ms. Christian, basically tell us about your new book.
Chance Meeting is a really exciting summer read. Actually, it's an everyday read. It's a story that addresses so many issues, but most importantly, it's the story about a Dominican woman who lives Dominica with her family to better her life. And she does very well successfully. She immigrates to the United States of America. She does very well professionally, and she's at the top of her game. However, as a result of a chance meeting, she finds her life turned upside down, and then the book actually chronicles her dealing with that, issue. So that's what basically Chance Meeting is. It deals, of course, as I indicated, with the immigrant story. It's a romance, so it deals with male-female relationship. It also talks about father and daughter relationship. It's a dynamic that's not often explored in books, but it's certainly addressed within Chance Meeting, and of course the mother-daughter relationship as well.
Do you think this is your contribution back to Dominica?
Much definitely, because one of the underlying themes in the book is the whole aspect of following in your heart. Oftentimes when we start off as kids, that's why it's so beautiful to just work with the young kids here, because as a youngster or as a young person, you're usually fairly clear what it is you would like to do. However, as you grow up and people tell you this and people tell you that, you sort of lose the focus on that dream. Chance Meeting is about keeping the dream alive and keeping your eyes on the prize, following your heart and doing what it is you'd really like to do.
Right now, you're heading the association in Washington, D.C. You have your practice. It's a growing practice. I get the sense it's growing.
We're doing very well, thank you.
You're shaking trees, and hopefully, as you shake the trees, you have enough people to pick the fruits on the ground, right?
That's right, or else they'll get rotten. I mean, that's the reality.
What's happening to your writing in the meantime?
Well, it has not suffered, and people wonder how I do it, but I guess, if you try to focus on a few things and don't let yourself be dazzled by the bright lights, because it's easy to get astray. You can easily be led astray in the United States. We have kept on. Irvin, Andrew, and I, long distance, because Irvin was a crown attorney in Ontario. We went to the grammar school together. Irvin's a little older than I am. Then he went to the sixth form and so on. We were involved in the independence struggle in the 1970s. He went to UWI. He's a trained historian who later went to law school. I did history only as far as Hubert Charles and Henry Volney, the sixth form college, which is now the community college. And we put out a small press production in 1992 of In Search of Eden, our first project. And Irvin has gone on and has distinguished himself in doing the first and only comprehensive history of Dominican literature in the post-Columbian period, meaning post-1492. Our Carib brothers and sisters, we really don't have a record, sufficient record to deal with the pre-Columbian period. And he went on to do his autobiography, a thinly veiled autobiography, Passage to Anywhere, in 1996. And those have been well received in North America, including Eden, which is a classic now in North America and sold out in about the first year. We are working on a revised copy or revised edition of Eden for the 21st anniversary, and I hope we can find the time for it. It's almost finished on Irvin's side, and I must say I'm remiss in not getting everything together. But on my side, I have, and I should have within the next 60 to 90 days, a collection of short stories, which are also thinly veiled reportage type stories of the past 25 years of Dominican history that I was part and parcel of, and that should be coming out shortly.
More phone calls for Gabriel Christian.
Yeah. So you progress, Irvin, to after writing your first book. I mean, you got
what would have happened is, as I said, Gabriel Christian with whom I've had a long affiliation. He moved to Washington because he was going to Georgetown University. And then we rekindled our friendship, so to speak. Baltimore was about an hour's drive from Washington. So virtually every weekend, I would go down to Washington and spend the weekend and so on. And on the Saturdays or Sundays, I can't remember which, probably both, we would make a pilgrimage to the Library of Congress. And we would start researching. So what happened?
So by then you had given up your interest in long distance running.
Oh, absolutely.
You would know.
Absolutely. We were focused on collecting archival information about Dominic.
Yes, yes.
So what happened in 1992? I wrote to a number of Dominicans, prominent Dominicans, with Gabriel's approval, indicating to them that we wish to write a book on Dominica's social, political, and economic history. Here is the plan that we have. We wrote to 10 persons because I had already set out the structure of the book, the chapterization of the book. And basically I asked each person if they would be interested in writing a chapter for this book. Suffice it to say that the response was lukewarm. So I basically said to Gabriel, look, we have a choice here. We either close down the shop or we summon the courage to proceed on our own.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what
happened.
So most of the research for that first book, Research of Eden, came from research from the Johns Hopkins University, the Library of Congress, and other sources. I should indicate when I did travel to Baltimore, I traveled with some of my own research material, which I'd gotten from the University of the West. So once we realized that that could be done, we wrote everything, we reviewed it, we edited it, which wasn't a very good idea, quite frankly.
Because you're reading your own work.
And you never edit your own work. But again, we had limited resources.
Yes.
This book was financed from our own resources. 14 of my books were financed from my own resources. We contacted a company called the Book Crafters in Virginia, and they actually printed the book for us. It was a triumph, not a financial triumph, but it was a triumph in terms of the triumph of the efforts we put into it. And that's basically...
So some of the 17 books, etc., were they edited by an independent body?
Yes, yes. I will learn from our mistakes. That has been the biggest challenge because it's very costly.
Yes.
You know, so we've had to engage the services of individuals, not professionals, but at least. But that has been the biggest challenge, just the cost, the production costs of these books, and so on. But I must say that Gabriel has a similar passion for Dominican history.
And Gabriel, as we affectionately call him, he has the gift of the gab. Oh my God.
You say so.
When he engages you in conversation, it never ends. And it's always informative, yes.
So he has shared that passion. We have dealt with some subjects which were long regarded as taboo. For example, that book we did on the 1963 disastrous fire.
Okay. Oh yes,
in the Roseau. Persons who didn't want to talk to us. There were certain persons who thought that we shouldn't be talking about these things because there are powerful persons in the community who take issues. But we said it had
invoking all sorts of memories that people would like to forget. I remember.
We go back to when U-boats were sunk, when the Americans were thought to be helping Britain, and the U-boats were sunk then when the Lusitania was sunk.
Well, Lusitania was sunk in the First War.
The First World War.
But they sunk the Lady Drake and Hawkins and so on in the Second War.
And it's something that we didn't hear about. U-boats in the Caribbean. As I said, we heard about them in the First World War and the Second World War. We didn't hear much about that because it was thought that the Caribbean didn't even have the capacity.
Well, not many people know that the biggest oil refinery in the world in 1940 was in Aruba. Aruba's oil refinery processed, I think, 400,000 barrels of oil per day. The biggest refinery in the United States at that time processed 150,000 barrels. And then you had Point 14 in Trinidad. So after Churchill appealed to Roosevelt,
After the Battle of Dunkirk, Britain was on its back. The Blitzkrieg, the German army, had swept the Low Countries, had conquered Europe, right, Danny?
Yes.
And the British army, how did they do at Dunkirk?
They had to retreat under heavy army attack.
And how did you get the news? You want to tell Doris about the news from Lowell Thomas?
Yes. It came about the news, American news, that today we had Lowell Thomas. He was a famous war reporter. And when Britain would say, today RF planes are over Berlin, we bomb heavy defenses, and all our planes returned safely. That's the RF speaking. When Lowell Thomas, American version, coming, today RF planes are over Berlin, 10 RF planes are shot down. You know, Britain did not want to say the amount of our planes that were shot down, as it would to demoralize the nation.
Fear, yeah.
So they want to keep up the indomitable spirit and say, all our planes returned safely.
War propaganda as usual.
So one day he came over and said, today the Germans are using a new invention. They're using flame-throwing tanks against the British Expeditionary Force. And nothing can save the British Expeditionary Force from total annihilation.
Wow.
And it sort of demoralized the British. But with their indomitable spirit, they kept fighting on. Until they were able to withdraw 350,000 troops.
So what happened was, at that time, Churchill appealed to Roosevelt and said, we need
help.
We need help.
He said, give us the tools, America. Give us the tools, and we'll finish the job. And America poured in tanks, guns, food, everything.
And interestingly enough,
came to the rescue.
And at the same time, Britain signed an agreement that they would give Britain, America would lease bases in the Caribbean, and by giving them give them 50 American destroyers.
And that's how the bases came about.
And
the United States then chose a young Howard University professor by the name of Dr. Eric Williams to be the Caribbean representative on the Caribbean Commission, which was going to be in charge of administering those bases. So you had bases at Chaguaramas, you had bases in St. Lucia, at Hiranara, Antigua at Coolidge Airfield.
Grenada.
So George, as you reflect on those years that we've lived, and where certain writers have taken up the pen, and it is said that the pen is mightier than the sword. Any comments?
I think we have vindicated the view that the pen is mightier than the sword. I think we can be very proud of what we've done, which is not to say that we should rest on our laurels. There's much work to be done.
Yes, indeed.
And I think certainly we can rest assured that we've put fire to the beacon of hope.
That's right.
On Ireland.
Yes, yes.
I think at least when folks speak in terms of us, I think the image which comes up are the works we've done. And I think that is a lasting testament to our generation, to many of us, or many of those who dreamt of chronicling the history of the island, but who for myriad reasons were not able to contribute as much as they would have liked to contribute. And I think we have to continue that work. We do not have the luxury of stopping. I think we have to be animated, and we have to be propelled by the famous dictum of Martin Luther King when he spoke of the fierce urgency of now. At no other time is the need to write our stories more significant or more important and more necessary. think we have to continue that effort because there's so much work to be done.
Indeed, indeed.
And
what drives you, Judge? Is it a sense of duty or the sense that we are mortal?
A sense of duty. It's a sense that we carry a significant amount of responsibility. It's a sense of my own mortality. It's a sense that life is a gift. It's a sense that life is perhaps an extension of the biblical parable of the tablets. That is to say, that we were put here to make a contribution. We were put here to exploit our talents, biblical and otherwise. We were put here to try to make, in the words of Michael Jackson, make the world a better place. And everybody, each person has his or her own unique talents. Some of us, we are in our seventh heaven when we sit down in front of a desk and we put pen to paper and we give free rein and expression to those ideas which are percolating below the surface. And I think we are fortunate in the sense that professionally and otherwise we've been given an opportunity to make a difference and to add to the well of knowledge of our own neck of the woods. And yes, the efforts may not necessarily be fully appreciated at this point, but that should not be an impediment. That should not be something which deter us.
That's right.
From continuing. The simple fact of the matter is, if we are preoccupied with a positive reaction at this time, then quite frankly, we may actually curb our efforts because the rewards that we seek to get cannot be measured in terms of spontaneous applause.
In fact, it may not even be measured in terms of our own lifetime.
Well, there you go. You know, but the simple fact is, I am comforted by the knowledge that 25 years, 50 years from now, some archivist, historian, will be searching the deep recesses of old libraries, old collections, and will blunder onto some of the works that we've written.
That's right.
And will regard it as a treasure, a significant find. And that person will build on what we've done and make his or her own contribution to the knowledge, since knowledge is this infinite realm which can never be fully explored or exploited. And each person aspires at some point to make a contribution to that infinite realm. And we can say that at least within the confines of our own limitations, we have made that contribution. And we've done so with relatively limited resources.
Absolutely.
There's been no grants. There's been no wonderful dispensations from heaven or from Washington.
Or from political patrons.
Or political patrons. On the contrary, we've written the first book. We wrote the first book in 1992. There has not been a single administration which has approached us and say, Christian, Andre, to encourage you in your efforts, sterling effort, we're going to buy 100 books or 200 books. We're going to make it available. We haven't been buffeted by those winds of official encouragement, but we haven't been deterred. And I can say, it's fair to say that Dominicans all over in diaspora, Germany, England, Canada, United States, think you can find some of our books in the households of Dominicans in particular, but West Indians all over the world.
Well, I think you can go beyond that, Irwin, and I will share with you that now I've come across Eden and other works that we've produced in academic texts. There's one Hofstra University professor who used it. There's a gentleman from Finland who used some of the work. In fact, I sent you something on crime written by the liaison for the regional security system, and the first book he had in his bibliography was his paper to be delivered in Suriname on Caribbean security was Search of Eden, the second edition. So, you know, folks have already blundered, come across the work rather, in a way that have caught their fancy and have caused them to begin to utilize the work as research platform for their own endeavors in the literary world and in the world of history and social analysis.
Dominica.